Good morning or afternoon, fifth graders. We are going to continue our story, Tiger Rising, and we are finding out some really cool things about Rob. And so we've learned, obviously, that this is a boy who has had a very hard life. He is going through many, many changes. One, living in a motel. 2, his mother has recently died. And 3, he is getting tossed into a situation where he's bullied and also into a situation where he is learning about this new girl named Sistine. And this new girl, Sistine, seems to be getting him into some trouble that he is wondering why he's allowing himself to get involved. And so as we read today, we are going to be thinking about the interaction between Sistine and Rob. That is our main focus. So in the past couple of days, we've been thinking about their actions. And what we know so far through Rob's actions is that he is a closed-off individual. He's very shy. In fact, in chapter 5, the principal was very, very concerned about Rob because he said Rob did not act with other students, he did not communicate, and he was not doing very well. So Rob was really, really closed off. And all of a sudden, the weird thing that happens is that in chapter 6, after he had received this note that made him ecstatic, right, because he was excused from school, he could get away from people, he all of a sudden stands up for Sistine, who is being bullied, and he says, get away from her, right? And so why he did that, he was really unsure why he did that, because she has not been a nice individual. As Mr. Nyhammer said, she's sassy and she's not very nice to anyone. So she would be a hard person to stick up for. But needless to say, he did. And he doesn't know why. He's just kind of interested in her. So as we go on in today's chapter, we are going to be seeing that Sistine and Rob have a few more conversations. And in these conversations, we are going to learn a little bit more about each of them. So as we go through today, I want you to think about what are these actions telling us about what kind of person or people Rob and Sistine are. Okay, maybe these interactions will lead us into knowing a little bit more about them. Okay, and as we go on and are thinking about this thing, let's make some predictions or some inferences on what we're finding out. Here we go. He had just ran away from all of the crew and hid out most of the day in school. Here we go. It turned out to be an extraordinary day in almost every possible way. It started with finding the tiger and ended with Sistine Bailey sitting down next to him on the bus on the way home from school. Her dress was torn and muddied. There was a scrape down her right arm, and her hair stuck out in 100 different directions. She sat down in the empty seat beside him and stared at him with her black eyes. There isn't any place else to sit, she said to him. This is the last empty seat. Rob shrugged. It's not like I want to sit here, she said. Okay, said Rob. He shrugged his shoulders again. He hoped that she wasn't going to thank him for saving her. What's your name? She demanded. Rob Horton, he told her. Well, let me tell you something, Rob Horton. You shouldn't run. That's what they want you to do. Run. Rob stared at her with his mouth open. She stared back. I hate it here, she said, looking away from him, her voice even deeper than before. This is a stupid hick town with stupid hick teachers. Nobody in the whole school school knows what the Sistine Chapel is." "I know," said Rob. "I know what the Sistine Chapel is." Immediately, he regretted saying it. It was his policy not to say things, but it was a policy he was having a hard time maintaining around Sistine. Now, this interaction, this whole talking about his policy of not saying anything and ending it with he was having a hard time saying it, my guess is that Rob is shy and closed off to almost all people. But he's more comfortable. This interaction is letting me know he's more comfortable around Sistine and wants to get to know her. I think this because he's only made an attempt to speak to her and nobody else. Right? I mean, look at those three Monger boys. He doesn't say anything to them after all the abuse they do. But to her, she was sassy. "No one knows what the Sistine Chapel is." And he starts answering back, "I know what it is." So this is letting me know about his personality. I think he's more comfortable. He's not as shy and closed off as maybe I thought before. "I bet," Sistine sneered at him. "I bet you know." "It's a picture of God making the world," he said. Sistine stared at him. She narrowed her small eyes until they almost disappeared. "It's in Italy. It's pictures. The pictures are painted on the ceiling." It was as if a magician had cast a spell over him. He opened his mouth and the words fell out, one on top of the other, like gold coins. He couldn't stop talking. "I don't got to go to school on account of my legs. I got a note that says so. Mr. Filmer, he's the principal. He says the parents are worried that what I got is contagious. That means the other kids could catch it." "I know what contagious means," Sistine said. She looked at his legs, and then she did something truly astounding. She closed her eyes and reached out her left hand and placed it on top of Rob's right leg. "Please let me catch it," she whispered. "You won't," said Rob, surprised at her hand, how small it was and how warm. It made him think for a minute of his mother's hand, tiny and soft. He stopped that thought. "It ain't contagious," he told her. "Please let me catch it," Sistine whispered again, ignoring him, keeping her hand on his legs. "Please let me catch it so I won't have to go to school." "It ain't a disease," said Rob. "It's just me." "Shut up," Sistine said. She sat up very straight. Her lips moved. The other kids shouted and screamed and laughed and called each other. But the two of them sat apart from it all, as if their seat was an island in the sea of sweat and exhaust. Now here, this interaction where she was ignoring him, "Please let me catch it," Sistine whispered again, ignoring him, keeping her hand on his leg. "Please let me catch it so I won't have to go to school." This is telling me something about Sistine's, right? This could mean that, this action could mean that Sistine is miserable as Rob. It could also mean that she's really desperate to leave the South and will do anything to make it happen. So right now, I think she's just showing me how desperate she is and how miserable she is. She's not maybe as mean as I thought. I'm going to add that in here. Maybe she isn't as mean, as I thought. I don't know. It's just making, sometimes when people are miserable and they're just so desperate, they act and leash out. And I think maybe that's what she's doing. So maybe she isn't quite as mean. Let's read on and find out. Sistine opened her eyes, and she took her hand away and rubbed it down, up and down her own legs. You're crazy, Rob told her. Where do you live? Sistine asked, still rubbing her hand over her legs. In the hotel, in the Kentucky Star. You live in a motel? She said, looking up at him. It ain't permanent, he told her. It's just until we get back on our feet. Sistine stared at him. I'll bring you your homework, she said. I'll bring it to you at the motel. I don't want my homework, he told her. So, said Sistine. By then, Norton and Billy Threemonger had spotted them sitting together, and they were moving in. Rob was relieved when the first thump came in the back of his head, because it meant that he would not have to talk to Sistine anymore. It meant that he wouldn't end up saying too much, telling her about things, important things, like his mother or the tiger. He was glad almost that Norton and Billy Threemonger were there to beat him into silence. Now that interaction between Billy and Norton Threemonger, that's telling me something too. It is telling me that it's leading me to predict that Rob and Sistine might become friends. And Rob's maybe not as shy as I thought. He's starting to talk to Sistine. So his personality, maybe he's not again. That's reinforcing, that he's not maybe quite as so shy. So right now, our question is, at the very end, you will be writing a paragraph using race. Remember, restating, answering, making sure you're citing text from the text or what you've heard, and also telling me again, then explaining that. So here we go. You are going to be answering the question, learn about the character. What can you learn about the character through their interactions with others? I have learned more about Rob and Sistine through their interactions. See how I restated the question? In the beginning, I thought Rob was so shy and closed off that he would not talk to anyone. As I listened and learned more, I discovered that Rob was more comfortable with Sistine. I know this because on page 23 it said, immediately he regretted saying it. It was his policy not to say things. He was having a hard time keeping it around Sistine. He could not help but talk to her. This makes me believe that Rob will open up to certain people and may be open to making a friend. So instead of what it's made me learn about him is definitely that he is not as closed off as we thought. And so this is what I'm learning as I'm picking up new information. So I am going to send you off onto chapters 8 and 9. You will listen to these chapters, and you are going to be diving into what he encounters when he tells his dad that he is no longer allowed to go to school. And you will also be thinking about his interactions with his dad and whoever else is coming along in these next 2 chapters. So think about what those interactions tell about your character's personality. And don't forget, look at the thinking stems that I used. My guess, this could mean, I predict. Make sure that you are going and using these to help you express your thoughts. And then again, at the very bottom, don't forget to write a well-written paragraph. And remember, a fifth grade paragraph, you're using and expressing your thoughts in a minimum of 5 sentences. Use race. We've talked about that quite a bit in making yourself clear. Okay? Good luck, and I look forward to seeing what you have to write, and so do all the other teachers. Bye.